Before the Jedi, those strong in the Force from around the galaxy were gathered onto a single planet known as Tython, and there they formed the Jedi Order. Not dark, not light, but balanced in between. Join me today as we explore the precursors to the Jedi here on Fatherly Fandom.
This is the way. This is the way.
Way before the Republic, there were the Tho-Yor, which were 8 pyramid-shaped ships that were scattered throughout the galaxy on planets strong in the Force such as Ando Prime, Kashyyyk, Manaan, Ryloth, and Dathomir. These ships remind me a lot of the pyramidal structures we saw during the Mortis arc in Clone Wars. Perhaps they're one and the same. They also seem very similar to the Star Temples, which were created by the Kwa, who were an ancient species that were native to Dathomir. They also built infinity gates across the galaxy to connect Force-sensitive worlds, which is how they found the Rakatan people. But the Tho-Yor were actually constructed by a much more ancient race of Force beings, the Anur, who lived on the planet Auruntor in the deep core. These beings were known as the Celestials or the Architects. When the Rakatan Empire attacked the Architects, the Anur created the Tho-Yor to find Force-sensitive individuals from across the galaxy in hopes of saving the galaxy and returning the Force to balance. One of these mysterious pyramids was found on Ando Prime when the Order of the DAII monks discovered the ancient ship, and the monks were the ones to name the relic Tho-Yor. And in 36453 BBY, the Tho-Yor on Ando Prime opened up and used the Force to communicate with the Bendu monks, who were invited to board the ship, then proceeded to travel off-world. At this point, all these structures called out with the Force on these planets to those who were Force-sensitive. The inhabitants, which consisted of Wookiees, Twi'leks, Sith, Devaronians, Celestins, humans, and more, boarded the pyramids, and the Tho-Yor took them into the deep core. In the deep core, all 8 pyramids arrived on the planet Tython, where a larger 9th Tho-Yor was waiting floating above a pinnacle of stone. The 8 pyramids then dispersed across the planet. Some remained floating in the sky while others landed and buried themselves in the ground. This event came to be known as the Tho-Yor Arrival. The Force-sensitive travelers that were brought to Tython learned that they were there to study the Force and to learn to master it. The Force-sensitive beings from across the galaxy soon learned that the planet Tython itself was extremely strong in the Force. These Force-sensitive pilgrims made the planet their home and became known as the Tythons. The Tythons realized early that the planet was very sensitive to Force users, creating violent Force storms if individuals were out of balance between the light and the dark. The Tythons named both sides of the Force after their moons of Tython. The bright moon called Ashla came to represent the light side, and the dark moon called Bogan came to represent the dark side. Being balanced in the middle was called the Bendu. Amongst the pilgrims were the Bendu monks, and alongside the other Force-sensitive beings brought to the planet, they formed the Jedi Order, taking its name from the language of the Bendu monks, with the word Jeb meaning mystic and Dai meaning center. In order to survive on the planet, the Jedi needed to obtain balance, so as not to throw the planet into chaotic storms. The Jedi strived for harmony between the Bogan and the Ashla. The Jedi then built their cities and temples around the Tho-Yor pyramids around the planet. Each pyramid had its own temple, and each temple had its own discipline that each Padawan would need to learn as they traveled across the planet visiting each temple. This tradition was known as the Great Journey, and once completed, the Padawans, having mastered all the skills, became a journeyer. The Jedi were an order of scientists, scholars, warriors, philosophers, and artisans, and they were governed by a single council known as the Masters Council, and it was comprised of 9 masters from around the 9 temples. The Jedi's philosophy was centered around balance, and everyone on the planet strived to maintain personal balance between the light and the dark side of the Force. These Force users acknowledged the fact that there would always be light in the darkness and vice versa. They believed that it was important to embrace both the light and the dark to truly understand the Force, though they always kept their emotions in check and tried to limit their use of dark Force powers. Their code reflected this philosophy and read, "There is no ignorance, there is knowledge. There is no fear, there is power. I am the heart of the Force. I am the revealing fire of light. I am the mystery of darkness and balance with chaos and harmony, immortal in the Force." When someone strayed either too far into the light or too far into the darkness, they were sent to one of the moons to meditate and try to achieve balance once more. Those who leaned into the light were sent to the moon Ashla to focus and meditate on the dark moon of Bogan, and those leaned into the dark side were sent to Bogan to meditate on the bright moon of Ashla. After some time, the Jedi found that some of the children who were born on the planet were not Force sensitive, and being that the planet was unsafe for non-Force users, those children were sent off-world, first settling on the moons, then nearby planets in the Tython system. Now, the Tython system was a star system located in the deep core and centered around the star Tythos. This system contained 8 planets. Over 1,000 years, the non-Force sensitive Tythons would spread out into the system to settle these worlds. In 25,805 BBY, Queen Jed'aii, who was a Twi'lek from the planet Shikakwa, which was located in the Tython system, ruled over her planet. The non-force sensitive settlers would establish criminal clans to rule the planet, and Queen Jed'aii would unite the crime lords, and they began taking over settled worlds in the Tython system. During these campaigns, Queen Jed'aii would be known as the Despot Queen, and they would have an all-out conflict with the Jedi during the system-wide takeover known as the Despot War. With major casualties, the Jedi Order defeated Queen Jed'aii and her army, which returned balance to Tython. 12 years passed and a ship had crashed on the planet Tython, and they found a human survivor named Zesh, who carried a force saber. The force saber that Zesh brought was a Rakatan invention, which used the power of the dark side to channel energy through a synthetic crystal that created a glowing energy blade. These blades were the precursors to the lightsaber. Zesh was what was known as a force hound, which was a warrior that was captured and enslaved as a child by the Infinite Empire, also known as the Rakatan Empire. Force hounds were tasked with finding new planets strong in the Force, and Zesh successfully found a path to Tython, though his starship, the Devourer, exploded over the planet. His arrival caused a massive Force storm because he was a dark side user. The Jedi eventually defeated Zesh and exiled him to the moon of Bogan. By 25,793 BBY, the Rakatan Infinite Empire invaded Tython because the Rakatans believed Tython would be the home to one of the Qua's Infinity Gates. By this time, the Rakatans were losing their control over the Force, and the Jedi Order were able to repel the invasion after allying themselves with the settled worlds in the Tython system. During this time, the Jedi constructed their own Force sabers to fight against the Rakatan invaders, but using these Force sabers required them to use the dark side. After the Infinite Empire was defeated, the balance of the Jedi Order was completely shattered, and the Order split into two groups. One that focused on the light side and believed that Ashla was the main power of good in the universe, and the other focused on the Bogan and found power in the dark side. In 25,783 BBY, the Force Wars, as they were called, left the planet Tython in ruins. The group that was dedicated to the Ashla founded a new group that would be known as the Jedi Order, and vowed to use their powers to protect the weak and the disenfranchised. The Darksiders also broke away, and the Jedi Order was no more, and eventually the Jedi Order defeated the Darksiders on the planet, but seeing the utter destruction of their world, many of the Jedi left Tython and settled other worlds in the deep core, eventually establishing a headquarters on Ossus. These successors to the Jedi would later become the defenders of the galaxy for 1,000 generations, bringing peace and prosperity to the galaxy alongside the Galactic Republic, which adopted the symbol of the Jedi Order's Bendu symbol as their own. These early Force users give us an idea that too much light or too much darkness can be destructive, and throughout Star Wars we see this take shape as the Jedi and the Sith dominate each other for power in the galaxy. After the rise of the Empire, Ahsoka takes the name Ashla in Tales of the Jedi, and in the novel titled Ahsoka, which is a reference to Tython's bright moon. And on Ahch-To we find that Luke discovered one of the first Jedi temples, and the symbol that we see in The Last Jedi on the island shows an ancient being that has both light and dark in balance. Perhaps in the future, the Jedi will return to the idea of balance between the light and the dark, as the Jedi once believed. And Tython first made its canonical appearance in The Mandalorian Chapter 14 titled The Tragedy. This is the planet where Din and Grogu go to visit the Seeing Stone to call out to any surviving Jedi to find the child. Could this Seeing Stone be a remnant of the Jedi long ago? I definitely hope so, and I hope that we will continue to see these Legends materials brought into canon, which ultimately could bring us new and interesting stories to explore in Star Wars. So there you go. Hopefully you learned a few things about the Jedi Order, and I appreciate you taking this dive into the history of this ancient order that existed long ago in the Star Wars universe. So thanks for joining me today on Fatherly Fandom, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel. And from our families to yours, have a good one, and may the Force be with you.